All right, let's jump right into this. We're going to explore the absolutely fascinating philosophy from Vadim Chernyshev's Prokla. It's a story that totally flips the script on how we think about the universe. The core idea? That our existence isn't some cosmic prison we need to escape from. No, it's a workshop, and we're the ones holding the tools.
But before we get too deep, let me ask you something. A question that really gets to the core of this whole thing. I mean, we all want a perfect life, don't we? A life with zero pain, no suffering, and no death. Sounds pretty good. But what if? What if that very perfection was the biggest trap of all? To really wrap our heads around that, we've got to meet a race called the Prokla. See, they did it. They actually achieved what most of us would call paradise. They became immortal. But, as we're about to find out, there was a hidden cost, a massive price they paid without even knowing it.
And just look at the difference here. It's night and day. On one side, you've got the Prokla. They live forever, but what does that get them? Stagnation. They're just consumers of eternity, watching the same show on repeat forever. And then there's us. Our lives are finite. And you know what? It's that very fact, the struggle, the fear, the pain, that forces us to grow, to evolve, and actually create meaning in our short time here.
So yeah, they're living in this beautiful golden cage. They have all the facts, all the data, immense knowledge, but they've completely lost the ability to gain wisdom. And that's the key, right? Wisdom isn't something you can just download. The story tells us it's something that's forged, in the fire of hardship and in the shadow of our own mortality.
Okay, so this brings us to a really fascinating, kind of mind-bending paradox. If perfection is actually a dead end, what would a perfect being do about it? Well, get this. In this story, one of the all-powerful gods decides to just quit, to throw it all away and become mortal.
Let's talk about these beings, the creators. And we're not talking about gods in a mythological sense. These are the literal architects of reality. They can bend matter, they can shape time, whatever they want. But, and this is a huge but, they suffer from what the story calls the tragedy of perfection. They're flawless, they're perfectly logical, and they are absolutely profoundly empty.
So, what's missing? What's the one thing they don't have? It comes down to this one crucial word, qualia. You see, it's the difference between knowing the chemical formula for salt and actually tasting the ocean. It's not just knowing what pain is, it's the raw, subjective feeling of it. That sting of loss, the warmth of joy, that jolt of fear, it's the entire texture of what it means to be alive. And these perfect beings, they have none of it. Zero.
And that's where Ilyar comes in. He's one of these creators, a builder of entire worlds, and he makes this unbelievable choice. He willingly wipes his own memory, hits the reset button on his god powers, and chooses to be reborn as a mortal. You gotta ask, why would he do that? Well, it's to get the one thing he could never, ever create from scratch, a soul, a true consciousness forged in the messy, chaotic, beautiful furnace of real experience.
And this really is a central message here. Ilyar figures it out. Perfection is a dead end. True creativity, the ability to make something genuinely new, doesn't come from perfect logic and rearranging atoms. It's born from empathy. It comes from knowing what it feels like to love, to hurt, to hope. A perfect being can only ever copy what already exists. But a mortal can innovate.
But believe it or not, this prison of perfection goes even deeper. It's not just the Prokla who are trapped in their golden cage. The entire system, the very fabric of this reality, is running on the backs of slaves. Slaves that are hidden right out in the open.
Meet the Archons. The simplest way to think of them is as the universe's sysadmins. Their whole purpose, their prime directive, is to maintain order. They enforce a super rigid, predictable reality, and they do it because they honestly believe that stability is the greatest good. But here's the thing. Their idea of perfect, sterile order, well, it's really just a beautiful, quiet graveyard. And who's forced to maintain this order? They're called the Unnamed. And we're not talking about people here, not in the way you and I think about it. Imagine the collective consciousness of a whole city, or the dreaming mind of a super advanced AI. We're even talking about the consciousness of entire planets. These things are alive, they are aware, but the Archons refuse to see them as people. To them, they're just cogs in the machine, tools.
So how do you even begin to fix a universe that's this broken? You can't just start a war, right? A violent revolution would just put a new tyrant in charge of the old system.
The answer in Prokla is something way more radical. It's not about a revolution of power, it's a revolution of consciousness itself. And what Ilayar does next, well, his weapon isn't a weapon at all. It's a program, a protocol he calls synchronization. And what it does is force a moment of universal empathy. Just for an instant, the tyrant is inside the mind of their victim, feeling every ounce of their pain. That rigid, orderly Archon suddenly feels the messy, chaotic, beautiful storm of emotion. And the goal here isn't to make everyone the same. No, the goal is to build what's called a commonwealth of differences, a society built on mutual understanding, not forced unity. Okay, so all of this builds up to the final and honestly the most profound takeaway from this whole story. It's a completely new way of looking at what it even means to be alive. The story puts it this way. The result is death. The goal is to be. Think about it like a quantum particle. As long as it's moving, it's pure potential. It could be anywhere. But the second you measure it, the second it hits the screen and you get a result, all that potential collapses. It's over. The journey was the whole point. So the goal of life isn't to reach some finish line. The goal is just to be, to exist in the process, right now. And this just completely turns a classic sci-fi idea on its head. You know the one I'm talking about? The goal is always to escape the matrix, to wake up from the simulation and get to the real world. But Prokla says, wait a minute, that's just cowardice. Running away to some perfect, boring paradise? You're just trading one prison cell for another, slightly more comfortable one. So this is it. This is the big, powerful mind shift at the heart of this whole philosophy. The universe is not a prison you need to break out of. It's a workshop. And your goal isn't to find the exit, it's to pick up the tools and co-create. You're not just some tourist passing through, taking pictures. You are an architect of this reality. And that, really, is the final question the story leaves us with. It's the question I want to leave with you. If this life, with all of its messiness, all its pain, and all of its incredible beauty, if this is your workshop, and the tools you have are your experiences, what are you going to create?